Meet ultraviolet, or UV as her friends call her. We know UV because her human is C&EN's audience engagement editor, Doria Reeser. And while we get to spend a lot of time with UV, we actually don't know much about her past. Doria says the shelter where she adopted UV really had no information. But what if a genetic test could finally give us some answers?
Well, everyone wants to know what she is, and it seems like more than half the people at the dog park have had it done, so it's kind of this like cool badge of honor to be able to say what your dog is from these DNA tests.
Over the past decade, companies like 23andMe have popularized genetic testing for the average person, giving them a glimpse into their ancestral past. Now, people are projecting the same genealogical curiosity onto their pets. They want to learn the genetic makeup of their beloved mutt, or they want to know if their purebred schnauzer is really as pure as the breeder claims. Last year, the animal genetics market pulled in about $4.2 billion worldwide. But are these products worth the money people are spending? How did the tests work, and how accurate are the results? Well, we tried to find out, with UV's help. We ordered 3 different brands of dog DNA tests to see how the results stacked up against one another. We also wanted to see how consistent a test was with itself, so we bought 3 of the mid-range wisdom panel tests to see if they gave the same results. UV graciously let us collect the samples for all 5 tests, and then we mailed them off. And we waited for a few months, and that was our fault. It usually only takes a few weeks to get the results back, but funny story, we set off Wisdom Panel's quality control alarms with our 3 tests. UV's tests, which we submitted under 3 different aliases, gave the exact same results. And although Wisdom Panel eventually sniffed out that the samples were from the same dog, they had to make sure they hadn't accidentally tested the same sample twice. So they sent us 2 more tests to confirm what they were seeing. And that whole process took about a couple months. So, one question answered. Do the tests give reproducible results? Yes, at least if you're using Wisdom Panel. Now on to the bigger question. Do they work? By the time we got UV's official test results from all 3 tests, we were pretty pumped. We even asked some colleagues to help us unveil the results. And those results were weird.
I have so many more questions. I was so excited about opening these.
Yeah.
And now I'm so confused.
DNA My Dog said she was mostly German Shepherd. Wisdom Panel said she had an 1/8 each of a bunch of breeds like Dachshund and Lhasa Apso. Embark said she was a 3rd poodle with other breeds mixed in. While there was some overlap between the tests, the percentages were all over the map. Clearly, we needed help making sense of these results. So I called animal geneticist Jessica Hickman, who's at the Broad Institute. And she really seemed to take the results in stride.
It's not too surprising to me that if you take a dog who's got a zillion different things in her, which this one clearly does, and give her to a bunch of different groups, that it's just, biology is just messy and genetics is messy, and we're not there yet to be totally exact.
Jessica says consumer tests are great at identifying dogs that are purebred or half and half. But once you get to a dog that's got an 1/8 of a breed in her DNA, things get dicey. To understand why, we need to understand how these tests work. Animal DNA tests work the same way as human tests. These tests sequence, or read, the DNA in a dog genome. But the genome contains about 3 billion base pairs, so reading all of that genetic information would get pretty expensive. Instead, most commercial tests read only a fraction of that information. Specifically, they look at read biomarkers, which are short sequences of base pairs in the genome at particular locations that have been associated with a breed. While geneticists have identified a ton of human biomarkers, there's much less published data on dog biomarkers. To figure out what biomarkers to look for, companies get samples from purebred dogs and build unique breed reference panels. But there's a lot of genetic diversity even within a breed. For example, border collies bred for show are different from those bred for herding. So it's important that these reference panels contain as many lineages as possible. To look for these biomarkers in your dog, a lab takes a sample, extracts the DNA, chops up the DNA, and pours it over what's called a sequencing chip. And it's dotted with lots of tiny strings of DNA, each one designed to match a specific biomarker in the genome. If your dog's DNA sample has that biomarker, it'll stick to the chip in that particular spot. Then the computer tallies up all of the matches and uses a proprietary algorithm to compare the results with the reference panel. And voila, you have breed percentages. Okay, now we know the tests identify breed biomarkers with tiny chips and computer wizardry. But why is it hard for them to identify small fractions of a breed in a dog, as Jessica says?
You can think of it as having these little windows where the whole world is dark and you get this tiny little window to look at this little piece of information. And so these windows, you're sort of hopping around and getting these bits.
If a dog has a single breed or has a mix of two different breeds in her, then getting little bits of information while overlooking other portions of the genome isn't a big deal. But for a dog like UV, whose DNA may include as many as a dozen breeds all mixed together, looking at a sampling of the genome means you may miss a lot of crucial information.
So visually, you can imagine that then if you could actually illuminate the whole thing, you'd see so much more. You'd be like, who knew that there was all these interesting things that I missed because they happened to be between these two windows?
So UV being a supermutt was a curveball for all of the tests. But is there a way to tell which one was the closest to being right? Jessica tells us there are two big factors in a test's accuracy. One is the number of breed biomarkers a test uses. More is better, she says. Wisdom Panel looks at about 1,800 breed biomarkers, and Embark looks at about 200,000. DNA My Dog doesn't disclose this number. The company did, however, claim that you only need about 50 biomarkers for breed identification. We asked Jessica about that, and she says the firm was likely misinterpreting a 2010 paper that points out about 50 regions of interest in the genome associated with phenotypic traits, such as coat type, in different dog breeds. But that doesn't mean that these are the only locations in which breeds differ from each other. She says while it's certainly possible to identify a purebred dog with less than 100 biomarkers, you don't know how mixed a dog is going in. So again, more biomarkers are better. The other factor that can improve a test's accuracy is how many breeds are in its reference panel. DNA My Dog has about 100 breeds in its profile, while Embark has more than 250, and Wisdom Panel has more than 350. So Doria, what do you think? Which test do you trust the most?
I think I'd go with Embark since they test for the most biomarkers and have the fanciest packaging.
Yeah, I agree. But it's not a cheap test.
No, it's definitely not. It's about $100 more than Wisdom Panel, and their results weren't that different. DNA My Dog was definitely an outlier.
So now when people ask you what kind of dog is UV, what would you say?
I would say she's a Dachshund Poodle Lhasa Apso German Shepherd Husky mix. Okay, that was a mouthful. I think I'd go with Supermutt. I like to think she has superpowers.
And knowing what you know now, would you spend your own money on a dog DNA test?
Absolutely. The results were a little confusing at first, but it was really fun and it's interesting to have more pieces to UV's puzzle.
Have you ever tried a dog DNA test for your pet? Let us know about your experience in the comments. Thanks for watching.